I feel like that's defensible.
All right, guys. So excited about this. The two players we got in this round. DeMarco, versatile player, safety, but he can play down. He can play deep. Productive player. He's smart. Special teams. Again, stick with the theme of the draft, and then you get to the next pick, Javon. Same thing. Versatile interior player. Smart, tough, highly competitive. Man, from the first pick, 8th overall, to the 8th pick in the 7th round, that's been the theme. We got smart, tough, highly competitive players that fit what we're about. They fit our makeup, and they're versatile, smart football players. So very excited about the outcome of this draft. We kind of said it at the outset. There's a lot of people that work really hard through this process. It takes the entire building to do this, and there's a lot of hours that go into it, and we're still working on it right now. We're working on the free agency process. We can start right when the draft ends. We'll start working on the free agency process and get our plan and start making those calls. But it's very exciting to be able to wrap up a draft class like this and then get into the free agents. Any questions?
Yeah, the productivity of both of the seventh rounders, DeMarco, leading tackler over there, and Jovan, 47 starts. Did that give you all a good kind of reference point to dig into, their potential?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, if you're that productive as a safety, obviously tough, smart. So that means something. Like you say, to start that many games, then you got to be a pretty tough, versatile guy. So yeah, that definitely means something to us, the production.
Yeah, D-Lay, that's another thing too. I mean, those guys were highly productive players in the SEC, and both of them played in a lot of big-time games and big-time environments, and they show up week in and week out. So we're very excited to add both of them to the program.
All right, this might be a weird question, but after I think it was your first pick, your second pick in the seventh round, they showed your war room, and it looked like you were just telling a story or something.
I may have been given
A Falcons fan, or the fact that it looked like they gave you a punter. I don't know.
no. I was maybe messing with Olsen about something. So may have referenced that he's the office Toby, but.
They when Javon was introduced on the screen, they first listed him as center, though I know most of his experience was at guard. You said interior, but you see both as possible landing spots for him. Both
Yep.
positions.
Yeah, absolutely. Charles, got to spend some time with Javon down at the when I went and did the South Carolina clinic. Knew a lot about him. Tried to recruit him in NC State and whiffed, but we got him this time. And but in all seriousness, I mean, he was a productive guy. To me, the leader, you could feel it. I mean, he was a leader in that building, leader of that line. There's nothing fake about him. Obviously a little undersized, but when you talk about a guy that you consistently finish and over and over and over again, not just in the big games when they're up. I mean, when you're looking at them and they're down, how they play in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's a guy that's exactly what you're bringing into this building, and we'll see how it works out. He played at guard. We think he can play some center. Again, no different when we drafted Matt, and we feel really good about the depth and where we're at in the O-line. But we also know that if you're not constantly building that, run on bad luck, you want to be able to develop guys and guys have been in your program. So if you got to play or if you, like we talked about, the competitive nature of our camp, and certainly Javon will bring that to the interior offensive line room.
I thought it was interesting, that full circle moment that you're talking about with Led and Javon, but how much, when you get into the 7th round, are you kind of relying on those relationships that maybe have already previously been established with either assistants or area scouts with guys who maybe you don't know as much about as you do in the first or second round?
Yeah, if I just speak from a coaching standpoint. I mean, it's part of it. I mean, it's not, there's plenty of guys we don't have that with, but you feel good about it because it's just one more confirmation of what we've already, everybody's been told. I mean, there's a lot of guys that go in that school. When you're talking about the SEC, I mean, that everybody hits them with their scouts, the regional scouts. People go in there, you get a lot of looks at them, and it just confirms what everybody's been told, what they've seen, their interactions with them. So it helps. I mean, now you're going back into the high school makeup of them, and you just see that long body of work and the consistency of the player and the person. So it certainly gives you a lot of confidence, the type of person, player you bring in the building.
Kind of following that, there are a couple guys that you took that were incredibly highly rated high school prospects that maybe didn't have the college production that would have correlated theoretically with that. How much do you go back to that of saying, hey,
In what regard? I mean, you're talking about
like,
that's one of the hardest. It's hard enough to play college football,
right?
but to get drafted in the National Football League, now you're just, see the comparison you're talking about relative here. Like, I'm kind of confused the angle you're going at.
I know. I was just getting at like when you like sometimes with high school guys, it's traits as well that maybe it doesn't work out for one reason or another. So I'm just wondering if that plays into it at all when you're looking at it, say like the talent was really, really there in high school, and then just with the production correlation, because it could have been used.
Again, I mean, you guys have covered this a long time, and Terry's got his own experiences too. There's some guys that these guys were productive. I mean, they played at a high level in a lot of football games, but I mean, I've been a part of places that have taken flyers post-draft on a guy that may have been a big recruit and didn't really get on the field in college and for whatever, and they want to kick the tires. But these guys, all these guys, I mean, sometimes whether you're a 5-star recruit, 3-star recruit, they found a way to play at some of the top programs in the country. So I would not certainly knock that. And it's all about perspective, Mike. I think sometimes, when you've got these tags, and if it doesn't go the way right away, you're more encouraged when they fight through it. So, I look at that as a positive in certain aspects. So there's a lot of ways to look at it.
Talking a lot about the guys that the Falcons have drafted over the last 3 days, but do you maybe take a step farther back and see the players that you've acquired with these draft assets? And I'm talking about Jeff, and I'm talking about Janu, like guys that you were able to use draft capital to add. Do you kind of include them into this kind of player haul, and do you look at it maybe that way, that say, hey, like, we could have had this 5th round pick, but we had Jeff. That's part of this player haul from what you had scheduled.
Yeah, it's all, they're all the draft picks they're assets, and there's, okay, we can figure out a way to, whether we're using a pick to go up and get a player or moving back, so they're all assets. But we kind of look at it like, even with guys like that, like with Jeff Okudah or Janu, we just really like the players, and okay, it's going to take a draft pick and some money to go get them. It's more about that, and you weigh it. Okay, if you're using this draft pick, you won't be able to draft a player there, but it's just literally when we really like players, no different than there's some players that we had to move around for, some players we were patient with, but when we have passion and conviction, whether we're talking about a free agent, whether we're talking about a draft pick, you have to be disciplined, but we just really want to go get them. So we just look at it like they're assets to try to get the right results that we want.
Everyone says they want toughness and physicality, but from Bijan to these guys just now, like those are pretty evident traits in these guys, right? So how big of a priority is that?
Well, it's pretty simple. Mean what you say and say what you mean.
Yep.
Have the discipline to do it. People tell you a lot of things, and we're not perfect. We don't think we're anything special, but one thing I know about Terry and myself and the type of staff we have, I guess. When we say we want to do something, you want to execute it, and you start making exceptions over and over again, and you don't really stand for anything. So,
yeah, you have to, like Arthur said, you're right. Everybody says that, right? But when you having the discipline to really do it, and when we're going to err on that side. So when we're looking at a couple players, and you have this player that's highly talented, but he doesn't fit the makeup that we're looking for, and you have this player that may not have the same talent, but he fits everything we're about. We're going to err on that side of taking that player that fits that. And like I said, right now we're going through the process of preparing to get ready to jump into the undrafted free agency process, and me and Arthur have to hurry up and get back in there so we can make sure as we're stacking, because you go through it and it's like, okay, now we're setting another board, and so now we're stacking. Okay, we're going to go after these particular players, and this is the order we're going to go after them in. But we're going to go through the same process with that. I don't care if it's an undrafted free agent. We don't care if we're just working a player out. We're going to talk, and it's all relative, right? It's not – we talk through it. Okay, hey, there were some issues here, and let's talk through it. Or this player was injured at this time, so you see something different. But we got to believe in the character and the football makeup, the personal makeup. We have to believe in those things to bring players into this program. So whether we're talking about players we draft, players we sign, undrafted free agents, players we work out, we want to have the discipline to stick to that.
At what point do you guys start working on the UDFA board? Like, is that like end of 6 or is this year different?
We
Come on,
start
like,
the
like,
board.
Come on, like, this is ridiculous. Like, don't, like, come on, dude. Like, we don't, you can't do that till after the draft.
Well, you said the board though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you were trying, okay.
No.
Start setting the board. I was wondering if there's difference this year because of the.
Well, yeah. And what we do
Good
with
pivot
the
there, Mike.
what we do with the board.
Yeah.
We're all tired.
But with the board, that's something that we start early on, and once we get through, okay, we have the players we expect to be on the front board. We have a front board, right? And we have the players we expect to be on there. But then you also have a backboard, players you don't expect to get drafted. And again, from the scouts and the coaches do a really good job, so they're grinding film on a lot of these guys you don't expect to get drafted, and some of them go, some of them don't, but we already have a good feel for it. You know, once we get through the front board meetings, that's what the coaches and scouts are grinding on these guys, just back to back, watching all these players that you don't expect to go for whatever reason. Some of them get drafted, some of them don't. And then, again, as players are going off, you continue to move around and set that board.
Now that most of the off-season roster additions are done, do y'all feel differently? Expectations is kind of a weighted word, but do you feel differently about where you are than this stage in the process 2 years ago, and what kind of team you've got and what's possible?
Just different years. I mean, I know what you're asking, but every year is different, right? There are different set of circumstances, different set of obstacles, and we said it. Terry said it right after the season, and I've said it whenever you've asked. I mean, it's different. I mean, I know what you're saying. These great expectations. I mean, our expectations are to win. I mean, we're trying to every year. I mean, we never made excuses, and we try to, whatever the hand you're dealt.
But do you feel better equipped now?
I mean, certainly, like we changed our strategy in free agency. We had money to work with and how we went about it, and I mean, but there'll be things that come up. There'll be opportunities. Maybe somebody proposes a trade that can improve our team, and maybe we couldn't have done that a year ago because of maybe a salary cap, constraint or something like that. But when everybody sets out, when we start a training camp, and we're trying to do everything we can to win every football game that we're a part of, and certainly you talk about expectations. Our expectations every year, go out there, talk about small starts, things that you try to control to get into the postseason, win your division. Now you can get in there other ways than wild card, but that'll be our expectation. You're talking about sustaining success. Let's get in the playoffs every year and get in the dance, try to make a run. And I would think that's what every other team's trying to do. But understand, if you can just win your division, you're certainly going to get in. And we certainly put everything we had into it last year, and we came up short. And obviously, I understand what you're saying because the roster is completely different now and things we've been able to add. But
So do you feel like you're equipped to do that now?
well, look, I mean, every year that's what you're trying to do is to win. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. I mean, we were putting everything we have into doing that.
There's a lot of names still on the street in terms of veterans. I don't know if you consider the volume of them typical or not, but after the draft and the undrafted free agency, do you reset and look back at those guys maybe more after the draft than before?
Well, there's some guys that don't want to sign until after the draft. Sure. So there's those, but then there's also some names, right, that they're not the same players that they were before, and there's a reason. So there's a combination. There's some guys that have opportunities that want to wait to sign, and there's some guys that they're names that are still out there, but they're not at the same level. They might not have the opportunities. But to answer your question, absolutely, there's still players that are on our radar, and And you have the leagues, the XFL, you have these leagues, and there's some good players playing in those leagues. And so we'll continue to work through it. You know, like we always say, it's 24/7, 365.
Anything else?
Yeah, just one general observation now that the dust is kind of settled on this draft, not all the way because you go into the 8th round as y'all called it last year. How do y'all feel? What do you got? You got six new picks.
Have you placed them all on your depth chart already?
Yeah.
Do that. I wish one of these days you catch somebody come up here and be like, hey,
So where did
we
you,
feel
where did you
awful.
put the 7th round picks?
we didn't get anybody we wanted.
You put them all at the bottom?
Somebody maybe one day will do that.
We're gonna give them a chance.
We got everybody we targeted.
Yeah, everybody going back of the line, earn their way up. That's how I learned.
No, I know.
No, but it is. We do feel real good about it. Like a lot of work goes into it, and you just don't know how to. You don't know how it's going to go. There's a real. You get really anxious before the draft starts. Once you get to that point where okay, now you got to sit and wait, and so it's. I mean, there's not many things like it where you're sitting there watching and you don't know what's going to happen and how it's going to affect everything else. It's so unique, and you fall in love with these players through the process, and you're going to get some of them, you're not going to get some of them, but the way the results, the way everything went, whether from the start of the off season through the draft, and again we'll keep going, but we're very excited about where this team is.
And just probably for some later on, the cost of constructing a draft board. I heard a $20 million number. Is that
Cost in terms of what?
just putting together a draft board, the scouts, the planes, everything that you all do, background checks, security checks. Just, I don't know if y'all see the number, but I heard, that I was like, it just stunned me that's what was a number that.
Yeah, I don't have the. It's expensive, but I mean, you're investing in your research, right? And it's that important because you're making major investments. Whether you're talking about a free agent you're bringing in, whether you're talking about draft picks, and you're making major investments. So it's really important to us to know everything that we can about the players, the people, to know everything we can about them. And look, we're flawed human beings evaluating other flawed human beings, so it's not a perfect science. It's never going to be a perfect science, but it's our job to make sure our process is to a point to where we can do our very best to cover everything, and it's that important. So it's a big number, but and look, we've said this before, this organization, top to bottom, from our owner Arthur Blank, any resource that we need, anything we need to make sure we can build the best possible team, it's available to us. And it's our job to, we're not just looking for, because everybody has the next best thing that they can sell you, but we want to make sure that we go through the process and find things that can really help us and can be effective and help us in the process. But whatever we need, if it can help us win, then it's going to be provided to us, and it's that important.
And Dealet, I mean, just a follow-up too, that's a good question. But you talk about return on your investment, right? And you don't want to ever, you don't want to waste anybody's time or money, and there is a cost to everything, but it's not just a return you may get on the particular picks you put into this draft. There's information you get that can help you in free agency, that can help you post-draft, and certainly a lot of these players, you guys know how transactional the National Football League is. You get into training camp or when guys are free agents, and the relationships that you hear, like you're at the combine and or you're at a pro day and guys coach this player in college, or so that stuff all matters. So it's not just this draft class, but it can pay off, as the year goes on, or maybe a couple years from now, and that's what you hope as you sustain success in a program. So it's a great question.
I can't see what number is it on.
257.
Almost there. Almost Mr. Irrelevant, right? Is it almost Mr. Irrelevant? You tried to catch us. Oh, come on, Mike. Come on.
You can tell when he has.